The SADC head of mission briefed the African group of ambassadors on Friday about the deployment of a regional force in Mozambique. He listed some of the key command and control structures. But how will these structures operate on the ground to ensure the militants in the Cabo Delgado region are eliminated within 3 months? For more analysis on the SADC force deployment, we're now joined by Counter-Terrorism and Organised crime expert David Otto. Mr. Otto, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to The Globe.
Thank you very much, Simphiwe, for having me.
Now, what role will the SADC troops play in Cabo Delgado as they officially go operational in the Mozambican mission, just a month after Rwanda and Mozambican troops launch the joint operations in the key jihadist areas?
Exactly, that's a very good question. I mean, this is a mission specific, and as you rightly mentioned, SADC forces are initially being deployed for a 3-month period, and this is subject to how operations go. So if it is successful, as the plan is being laid out, then it's expected that they will leave after 3 months. But most often in counterinsurgency operations, things hardly go as planned. We're looking at perhaps some kind of a renewal. So I mean, the mission again, you've got to start from that, is to make sure that the capacity and the presence of the jihadists known as the Machababos who are operating in the northern part of Cabo Delgado, that they are eliminated and that the population is protected and that they are there to assist. Again, this is very important, to assist Mozambican troops, but also, as you rightly mentioned, because now we already have Rwanda troops that have been on ground, or on that bilateral agreement. I also understand there are Zimbabwean troops also on ground. So we're expecting to see SADC forces working hand in gloves with these countries and making sure that they can achieve the mission. As we speak, they've been actually located in the capital of Cabo Delgado, which is in Pemba, which is the capital city. We understand that they will actually be, controlling areas in Makomia, in Mwindimbe. About 8 out of the 15 districts, I think will be controlled, by both SADC and Rwanda troops to ensure that the offensive position that Rwandan troops are taking in the locations up north, which is around Busimba Praia, that jihadists do not, find any safe haven by sneaking down towards the south. So SADC troops will be placed in a very powerful defensive position in the locations where they are being expected to operate within. So I'm really positive that we will see some much more development on the battlefield as the days and weeks come by.
And we're made to understand, Mr. David Otto, that the SADC mission in Mozambique will have 4 components. What are some of these components and why are they so important, and the significance thereof?
Of course, I mean, in any counterinsurgency operation that you're deploying your forces from one country to another, there has to be a clear planning and a clear coordination, especially with the home nation. So what we have is that there is now a main office, which is based in Maputo, that is going to be controlled by the head of the mission. And the reason why, they will be in Maputo, of course, is because, that is the seat of power and also the capital of Mozambique. So the head of mission will be there to make sure that they can coordinate, all the operations that are ongoing, both military and non-military. And that takes us to the regional coordination, which, it's being done by one of the Botswanian generals, because Botswana, of course, is a contributing force to the SADC deployment. Now, what they would do is, again, make sure that both the military and the non-military components are being controlled. They would look at monitoring and evaluation, which simply means they would see how the operations are being, how they work on ground. If there is any adjustments that they have to make, like in most cases in counterinsurgency, they will make those adjustments. if there are any logistical or operational needs, they would be able to make sure that, that could be done. Remember, you're deploying forces to a foreign nation.
Yes.
Most South Africans have never, the South African military have never been directly involved in countering insurgency in the manner in which they may possibly face in Mozambique. So this is a new terrain, and it requires a lot of coordination, especially, I have to mention, with home nation troops. They know the terrain, they understand the jihadist modus operandi. They will be able to lead the mission, while SADC forces, again, as I mentioned earlier on, assist, in some of the defensive and offensive positions. Again, the last component is the military headquarters, which is based in Pemba. Now, these headquarters would be used, perhaps, in my opinion, to transport troops to the front line, perhaps also to treat troops where it is required. But I think one area that is missing significantly, would have been some kind of an operational safe corridor, which should have been established to ensure that people that really want to surrender could actually be able to surrender to some of these foreign troops. That is very key, especially when you deploy so much heavy firepower. There are people who want to surrender, but they need an avenue. And I think this should be considered in the planning as they go.
And the fact that the military headquarters will be in Pemba, just how important is this choice of location for these headquarters?
Very powerful. I mean, Pemba, of course, again, as I mentioned, is the capital of the Cabo Delgado province. Yes. So it makes sense for the headquarters to be placed there. But secondly, it is at a very strategic position, which means it's almost the boundary that prevents any influx of jihadist activities from the northern parts. So in areas like Nanga there, in Makomia, in Mueda, in Muidumbe, which is also part of the north, what they're trying to do is to make sure that the SADC forces act as a buffer to not allow fleeing jihadists, to take advantage of the vulnerable population in the south and penetrate those regions. So it's almost like, there is a defensive position, which has been taken by SADC, approaching towards the northern part, while Rwanda and Mozambican forces are pounding the jihadists, up north. So I think it's a very powerful, perimeter, I'll call it, in the way they are operating.
And the SADC mission, I understand, will be deployed for 3 months. Is that enough a period to root out the insurgency in Cabo Delgado?
I think very unlikely. 3 months is a very short period, especially in counter-insurgency operations. First of all, you need to be able to understand, the environment. It takes a lot of time to do that. Even when you have a very smooth coordination with Mozambican troops, you still need time. Remember, language is also an issue here. The Mozambicans, may not necessarily speak the same language like SADC troops. I mean, some of them may understand a bit of Portuguese or the local languages, but again, you've got to make sure that communication is being understood. If you have interpreters, they have to be able to understand the mission. They have to understand, the modus operandi and how SADC troops do operate. So it takes a lot of time, even for these forces to set off. And that is one of the reasons why we've seen a lot of delay in the front deployment of SADC standby forces, just because of the, what I refer to as paperwork. I mean, it's not really that paperwork, but it involves a lot of operational details, which, sometimes it's not readily understood by the local population or the audience. But what I think is very important is that as time goes on, they will be able to determine if 3 months is actually feasible. But, trust me, it might take longer than that. Counter-insurgency operations, one thing that terrorists do have is they have time. And, we have the clock. True. They might just decide to wait out for 3 months and, see how it goes. And, so you can never tell.
Yeah, indeed, you can't really tell what's on their minds and, what their next plan of action is. And how will the SADC mission sort of fit into the bilateral cooperation between Mozambique and Rwanda and, the Rwandan mission, which already has its boots on the ground in Cabo Delgado?
Yes, I think one of the things which the coordinator made it very clear, which, I'm very impressed about, is the fact that, they understand that there are already Rwandan troops on ground and other countries with bilateral agreement with Mozambique, and they're very much open to working, alongside them to coordinate, to communicate, to plan operations and to execute these operations. That will be very key, and this is one area where jihadists will be watching very closely to see how much coordination is being done between between SADC forces and also between Rwandan and Mozambican troops. So they've got to be really watertight, in their operations. And, they shouldn't be distracted by historical political disagreements or anything that might, derail the mission specific. The only enemy here is the jihadists. And this is where the focus of the mission should be. But I'm contented that with what Rwanda and Mozambican troops, remember, this is a joint operation, with what they've already achieved at this point in time, I'm glad that SADC is coming at the very perfect time. And I'm hoping to see, the might and, efficiency of the South African forces and other contributing countries, making sure they're helping a broader country, a member of SADC, to get rid of its terrorist organization that it's causing havoc in its economy.
All right, Mr. David Otto, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.